We're here in Council Chambers on Wednesday, January 10th at 6:30 p.m. Thanks to the ongoing AV support that we're receiving. Beautiful sound. Amazing. Thank you. So we'll go straight to calling the meeting to order. I know many parents today were juggling the second snow day in a row. So not easy. Hopefully weather gets a little bit better tomorrow, but I understand there's more snow on the way. So there it is. All right, we're going to move to our land acknowledgement, and I will invite a member of council to read the land acknowledgement. Thank you, Councillor Strachan.
The municipality of North Grenville acknowledges that the municipality operates on the territory of the Anishinaabe. We recognize all First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples who now call North Grenville their home. We respect and support the need for cultivating a strong relationship, and we commit to Indigenous-informed decision-making to foster the path towards reconciliation.
Thank you very much. Of course, the intention for tonight's meeting is that we receive the draft budget presentation from our municipal staff who've been working exceedingly hard over the last several weeks to get this to us. So very appreciative. Jan 10th is a pretty good date given everything that's transpired over the last few months. So thank you very much. And I'll look for a mover and a seconder to get us going for this agenda. Councillor O'Sullivan, Councillor Wilson, thank you very much. And I'll call the question on the adoption of our agenda. Good. Thank you. That carries. Of course, we don't have a closed session this evening, so I'll just look for disclosures of interest. Colleagues, any perceived or real declarations of interest in regards to financial benefit or loss arising from tonight's agenda? Not seeing any. We'll move on. We will go straight to the office of the Chief Administrative Officer, Ms. Dunlop, and she, I think, will begin the budget presentation proceedings. And while we're at it, Ms. Dunlop, perhaps you'd like to introduce the newest member of our senior management team.
Certainly, thank you, Your Worship. And as the Mayor has noted, we have a new Deputy Treasurer with us this evening. Dave Dancy has been welcomed into the North Grenville team and the Finance Department, so he has been instrumental in assisting SMT in creating this package for you this evening. And I am sure there'll be questions for Mr. Dancy later in the evening. So with that, Madam Mayor, I will just start the presentation. So Council has a budget book in front of you in regards to the presentation I'm about to refer to. So good evening all, and thank you for attending this presentation of the Senior Management proposed 2024 budget based on strategic planning, expected service levels, master planning documents, asset management requirements, and community requests. Next slide. The agenda this evening is all-encompassing, as provided on this slide. All senior managers are here this evening to answer your questions or get you answers before our next session. We will review the highlights of the operational and capital components of the tax-based services and the user fee-based water and wastewater portion. Next slide. A budget is the strategic and financial plan that provides the direction for the next fiscal year and sometimes beyond. All municipalities must approve a budget in accordance with provincial regulations. Next slide. So I'm now on page 4. North Grenville budget is broken down into tax-based operating and capital and rate-based water and wastewater operating and capital. Both programs identify revenue, values, and sources. Next slide. The budget process began months ago by reviewing trends and commitments by staff, looking at service levels and goals. Senior managers have provided this document for Council's review. It will rise back for consideration following public engagement sessions that hopefully proposed to be scheduled for January the 17th and February the 1st, one in person, one hybrid, and one virtual. Next slide. Strategically, we incorporated growth, services, economic development, business needs, environmental, community, and service delivery expectations in this budget. Next slide. The next 8 slides are departmental 2023 highlights and 2024 goals. Each director will be speaking to their operational division, starting with Public Works.
Thank you, Madam CEO. So for Public Works, we do have a number of 2023 highlights that we have noted on this slide. A big item from 2023 and will occur into 2024 is the County Road 43 expansion construction. So the United Counties of Leeds and Grenville, in a partnership with North Grenville, did award the County Road 43 project, construction project, in 2023. It also, as you notice, is expected to start in spring of 2024. So that will be a fairly large endeavor within the municipality. Although we do not are part of the roads portion of it, we do have the sidewalks, the multi-use pathways, a lot of the street lighting, and different factors, as well as the water and wastewater component for that project. So it is still, although led by the United Counties, is a large project with the municipality. A number of construction projects that did take place over the 2023 year. We did have a completion of the Boundary Road Cross Culvert replacement. That was a partnership with the City of Ottawa. We also had the completion of the Denison Road Bridge rehabilitation, which showed the closure of that bridge between the end of August and opened back up at the end of October. Regarding the 2024 Public Works objectives, obviously County Road 43 was a big item that we were looking forward to. We do have a number of master plans that we're looking to endeavor. One is an update to the transportation master plan. So that has been a 5-year timeline since the first transportation master plan was brought forward. So this will be a good refresh to identify what worked, what didn't through that plan, what recommendations have been met, and if there's any new recommendations moving forward. We do have a new waste transfer master plan that we are proposing. This is due to the increase in service demands at the waste transfer site. So what we're intending for this plan is to identify short-term and long-term recommendations to help better serve the residents as they use this facility. And then we have a number of infrastructure rebuilds, such as a new sidewalk along Van Buren, or along Bridge Street, from Van Buren to Parkinson Street, completion of a section of River Road from Acton's Corners to about 0.8 of a kilometer east to the bridge where the last 2023 section was stopped, a number of gravel rebuilds identified, and the completion of the Burt's Rapids detailed design. This was awarded in 2023. There is some additional funding being requested in the 2024 budget, along with, again, completing that detailed design. So those are a few highlights and work objectives for the upcoming year.
So Karen, was it your vision to stop after the end of each presentation for questions from colleagues?
Always welcome questions from Council, Madam Mayor.
Okay. Council colleagues, anything at this stage before we move on? We can also obviously ask questions at the end, but welcome anything now. Okay. Deputy Mayor and then Councillor O'Sullivan, please.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Finley. I'm just curious about where we are with the road needs study and whether that's influencing your plans to rebuild or surface street some of these roads in 2024?
So we took the road needs study into account. It was done, just completed in 2022. So we're using that study at that time to identify which roads we are looking at in the 2024 proposal. It also includes a number of other factors that begins our baseline, and then we take into account our operational objectives and a number of other considerations to work out which roads require rebuilds, which ones are having an overlay, and different projects like that.
Remind me when we do the next road needs study.
They're on a 5-year rotational basis.
All right, Councillor O'Sullivan?
Thank you. Through you, Madam Mayor, to Director Finley. So the only sidewalk for the 2024 is that piece from Bridge Street to Parkinson, or from Van Buren to Parkinson. That's the only sidewalk for the next year.
So through you, Madam Mayor, that is the only new sidewalk being proposed. We are also proposing a few MUPs in a few different locations that we can get to when we get to the list of capital projects. These were just a shorter list of a couple highlights.
Okay,
so
great.
There are a number of MUPs also being proposed,
Okay,
but that is
thank
the
you.
only
So-
new sidewalk, yes.
Okay, thank you very much. Happy to hear that.
So to that end, just for council's edification, we're doing a round of highlights from 2023, objectives for 2024. We'll do that with all of senior management, and then we'll get into the more detailed proposals within each department. Is that right, Ms. Dunlop?
That is correct, Your Worship. There, further within the presentation is the actual capital lists for the individual departments.
Okay, excellent. I too have some questions about sidewalks and MUPs, but I will reserve them, but I will recognize Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, through you, Mayor Peckford, to Director Finley. I noticed that, and maybe correct me if I'm wrong, the Totem Ranch Road rebuild, or whatever, gravel, that was a collaboration. Is that part of the 2023 Totem Ranch?
So through you, Madam Mayor, that is correct. The Totem Ranch Road rebuild was done in 2 phases. So last year was the gravel rebuild, and this year will be the paving.
Okay, so that is in there?
Correct.
Okay,
Yes, being
thank
proposed.
you.
And it is, sorry, just for clarification, it is a joint project as well with
Right.
Edwardsburg Cardinal.
Yeah, thank you.
Good. So we'll leave it there, but we'll come back to you, Director Finley. Thank you.
Next slide, and next up is Parks, Recreation, and Culture.
Thank you very much, Karen. So Parks and Recreation, I will go through some of the highlights of 2023 and some of our objectives for 2024. So in 2023, obviously, very recently, we finally got the new outdoor rink open at Riverside Park, and the new building, accessible building, is now open for the public to use. We completed the playground works at Crozier Park and Oxford Station Park. We also completed the Burt's Rapids Community Park new fencing and basketball asphalt court. Through the work of our manager of community and leisure services, we've certainly been strengthening our partnerships and offerings to the community. We're supporting many different events now, such as Busker Fest, the Santa Claus Parade, Canada Day, many BIA events. We've ran a volunteer fair in 2023, and we've also supported and worked with the Lenz and Grenville Health Unit, the Kempville Youth Center, Youth Connect, many of the community associations in North Grenville, and of course the YMCA, who took over our summer pool program. We started the work on the former Oxford Mills Town Hall with the demolition of the interior of that building to start work on rehabilitating that facility. Some of our objectives for 2024 is the completion of the Heron Nest Park, which is in the Tempo subdivision. We started some of that conceptual design work in 2023, and we'll continue with detailed design and construction in 2024. We will be opening the splash pad at Riverside Park, hopefully late in the spring of 2024, weather dependent. We will complete the Riverside Park multi-use pathway and also the Enbridge Courtyard at Riverside Park as well. And we will also, due to some new updated population numbers within the municipality, we are going to look at a phase 2 of our indoor pool feasibility study. We did that study a couple of years ago, and we want to update that study based on our population growth changes. So those are some of the highlights, and as mentioned, I can get into more detail with once we get around to our capital programs.
Good. Any initial reactions, inquiries? Seeing none, we'll move on. I'm sorry. I apologize, Deputy Mayor.
Sorry, this is all fresh information. So bear with me. Through you, Madam Mayor, to Director Guy. The beginning the change of use project for the Armory building, is that funded? What is necessary to change the zoning of that? Or when you say begin, you see it as a multi-year project?
Through you, Madam Mayor. At this point, it's I guess a bit too early to say. We did receive funding through a federal government grant of $100,000. That $100,000, I believe, has to be spent in 2024. The project is much larger dollar value than that, so it'll really depend on by the time we get a design and get a tender document out and when the work can begin. Because the work will include increasing the washrooms, the exits, some of this life safety, such as fire extinguishers, to change the use to an assembly hall. And we also have some accessibility issues with some of the entrances to the building.
Yeah, so the design work will be coming out of that $100,000 this year?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else? Seeing nothing, certainly we'll move on. Thanks.
So next slide, actually the next two are corporate services.
Thank you, and through your worship. So tonight I'll be speaking to the corporate services budgets, which includes the clerk, corporate strategy, and IT divisions, as well as the cemetery and council budgets, just so you know what's coming up on those slides. So lots of exciting things happened in 2023. If I had to pull out a couple, in corporate strategy, we got to work more on equity, diversity, and inclusion, as well as reconciliation efforts in concert with the newly established advisory committee, as well as the circle, respectively. And behind the scenes, we also worked on rolling out a new electronic records management system, which will make all of our lives a lot easier and was a very big undertaking. Next slide, please. And for 2024, I think obviously one of the biggest ones we have is launching NG Transit, which I'm sure everyone is aware of now with our soft launch happening this past week. We already have lots of bookings rolling in, so it's great to see in the back end. I'll note for future operating budget slides that the transit operating expenses do lie within Public Works, but we do have some funds in the corporate services budget, and as well, I'm the lead on that project. So if you have any questions about that, I'm happy to answer those later on. And then the other one I want to highlight as well is completing the council chamber upgrades, which I'm sure we're all realizing is much needed after tonight. So I'll leave it there, but if you have any questions, happy to answer them.
Good. Looking for hands. Ms. Jeannot, can you tell us when the completion of the council chamber upgrades will happen?
So phase one is specific to the council chamber upgrades, and commissioning is happening next week. So it should be done as long as everything goes well next week with testing.
Okay. Excellent. Thanks.
Thank you. And the next slide will be EPS.
Thank you, Madam CAO. Good evening to Council. We have a few highlights and objectives we'd like to present to Council this evening. Some of our 2023 highlights. I would like to note that some sound progress has been made, achieving our achievements in our recent years, including 2023, in maintaining our municipality's emergency and response equipment and gear. We've been successful sustaining our department capital plan, as well as our corporate asset management plan. Our business plan to realign the EPS division and introduce a chief of training were prudent steps to meet legislative changes that were introduced by the province of Ontario and the evolving fire service. The commencement of our staff-driven community risk assessment is a meaningful step in moving forward and will also support our upcoming fire master plan to address service levels in a growth-driven community. Some of our objectives for 2024. In 2024, there are fewer capital asset projects planned in 2024, apart from completing some carryovers from 2023. There will be continued focus on personnel and fire service planning to address community growth and development. We hope to fill the vacant, restructured fire prevention position and strengthen the department's management and leadership team as part of our succession planning for North Grenville. We also will endeavor to remodel the volunteer firefighter honorarium with a progressive firefighter classification system in line with the firefighter certification in harmony with a modified recruitment program. Those are some of the objectives, and happy to answer any questions.
And that concept plan for station number 2 is the upgrading of the fire hall in Oxford Mills, correct?
That's correct. We will look at a consulting report to look at a Station 2 build in Oxford Mills,
Right.
correct?
Separate from the Public Works garage.
That's correct.
Yeah, okay. Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you to Chief Oakham. Regarding station number 2, did I understand correctly that it would be separate from the garage in Oxford Mills, or would be adjacent to it, or within that footprint, the Maplewood Park footprint?
Through you, Madam Mayor, to Deputy Mayor. That's correct. The Station 2, the plan is to have an independent freestanding building separate from the Public Works garage, which is located within the Oxford Mills Park area. We will be at a separate location. The studies do include post-disaster style building that will be constructed as standalone.
And is it my understanding that you've got a number of sites in mind, or have you settled on this one site in particular?
We have a site in mind, and that will be presented to a consulting firm that's successful in our request for proposal to review that site and provide feedback through their study on that.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Anything else at this stage? Not seeing anything. All right, so we'll move on to Ms. Martin, is that right?
Thank you. Yes, next slide, planning and development.
Thank you, Your Worship. I seem to have drawn the short chair this evening, so. In 2023, we had 3 major milestone achievements in the Planning and Development Department. The first was the population study update, which was presented to Council back on December 13th. We had our housing report card, so it's our monitoring system for housing, which was presented to Council in June of last year, and a very successful Affordable Housing Summit at the end of September. Looking forward to 2024, we will be doing our official plan update, but prior to the official plan, we'll be undertaking a comprehensive community engagement process to ensure that the community is well engaged on what the official plan process will be, but to better get a sense of what does the community want when it comes to how North Grenville is going to continue to grow in the future. And we will also be updating our development charges bylaw. If there's any questions, I'll be happy to field them from Council. Thank you.
Questions at this stage? Not seeing anything? All right.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The next slide is in regards to CAO and economic development highlights. The 2023 CAO highlights upgraded municipal website and departmental communications review and implementation. And leading into 2024, we are looking to do a service delivery review and update those communications by having a strategic plan. In regards to economic development, the manager of economic development, Matt Gilmer, could not be with us tonight, but he provided these highlights and goals. In 2023, economic development completed many projects. One for highlighting is the new waterfront strategy. This project was to demonstrate how we can showcase and access the Rideau River better. This project was completed in collaboration with all departments and public engagement. As a goal, in 2024, we want to start implementing some of the report's recommendations. Next slide. The next slide is library highlights, and the new CAO of the library, Emily Farrell, provided a few highlights and goals for the library. In 2023, they completed a Sunday hour pilot, and in 2024 we'll continue with some Sunday hours, January through April, from 12 to 4. Next slide. The North Grenville team plan to continue to improve service delivery by reviewing policies and bylaws, update our strategic plan, and multiple master planning documents. Next slide. We plan to continue to digitize municipal records and the building permit process, plus provide for better virtual participation in council and committee meetings. Next slide. We plan to improve our project planning through online management programming, refreshing master plans such as the fire department's, transfer station, and emergency management HIRAs, and improve financial reporting, including trending on a more frequent basis. Next slide. The budget is impacted by many different factors: growth, strategic and work plans, public consultations, asset management needs, sustainability, climate change, and inflation. We have all seen the supply chain impact over the last few years, and it is not balanced back out yet. Next slide. The next two slides are the municipality's commitment to investing in our community through the Community Grant Program, Community Support Program, long-term, and health care. Next slide. Community development, signature events, and cultural items. Next slide. As provided last year, these are the definitions commonly used in our budget breakdown: salaries and benefits, materials and supplies; insurance, which has seen an almost 10% increase this year; contracted property services, which are items such as utilities, cell phones, repair and maintenance of some assets, including fleet and leased fleet. Next slide. Contracted professional services include items such as IT support, legal, reports and studies, fees and dues, training, conferences, and software. Next slide. This is the summary of the 2024 proposed operating budget, which provides for a 3.5% municipal tax increase, and will provide an overview of the operational departments in the coming slides. The revenue for the municipal government is primarily through municipal property taxes, although we do receive formula-based grants for certain purposes from higher levels of government, which are embedded within the budget. These grants include the Canada Community Building Fund allotment for 2024, which is just under $565,000. The Ontario Community Infrastructure Fund provides for $885,000, and the Ontario Municipal Partnership Fund will grant us $1,076,300. This, along with the required taxation base of $18.5 million in added user fees, revenues, and development charges, makes up the revenue to operate the municipality. Next slide.
Maybe I'll just hold you there, just
Certainly.
in case council colleagues. Any questions on this particular page? Draft operating budget? I have a question, but I'll defer to Deputy Mayor first.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you to the CAO. I'm looking at some of these growth numbers, and other revenues have gone from around 800,000 to 1.4 or 1.5 million, an 85% increase. Can you put your finger on where that comes from? Or it might come from many different places, but give me some sense of what that increase is due.
That increase can be from additional user fees, grants such as, grants are a separate line item. So it's other revenues such as user fees, additional taxations. Okay, no, I can't.
Okay, we've got lots of time.
It is individually listed, though, under the individual operations, and I can have a further breakdown at the next meeting.
Councillor Sullivan?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you to CAO Dunlop. Is it possible that because we're coming out of the pandemic and revenues had significantly reduced in 21, 22, and probably part of 23, that now we're going back to a more normal revenue?
If I may, Your Worship, I think that, as Deputy Mayor pointed out, the user fees are one of the items that took the biggest hit during the 2020, 21, 22 years. Although, yes, we did receive some COVID recovery funds, I think that the additional breakdown of other revenues at the next meeting I can provide. But we are seeing a good bounce back of recreational type user fees.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yes, great, thanks. Yes, Councillor Chrétien.
Through you, Madam Mayor, I'm just looking at, this may not matter, I haven't actually had a chance to do the math here, but I'm looking at the lines under the dollar growth value and the 391,000 for the user fees should be, it's a negative, correct? So the 391,000 should be in parentheses just for the proper notation. Do I have that right? Because it is under? Okay.
You are correct. In the, through you, Your Worship, we did catch the 9.2 was not in parentheses this afternoon, but we did not catch the 391, so yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Great. Anything else at this stage? My only question is the transfer from DCs is the same year over year. We know that DCs are that fund is intended for many different things. Is it clear to you, Ms. Dunlop, at this stage what the draw from DCs is for or intended for?
Thank you, Your Worship. In the individual operational breakdown, we'll specifically show that one value. So that 255,000 is for a single department. So we will see that as we flip through.
Great, thanks. All right, if there's nothing else, then I think you can carry on.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm on the next slide. The proposed taxation increase for the municipal component of the property tax is 3.5%, which above growth will provide an increase of just over $611,000. Next one. Thank you. The municipality also accumulates debt for larger and long-term items. The next two slides demonstrate the current debt and annual payments. And next slide. Included on this slide at the bottom, you will notice that the campus mortgage, which is paid by the reserve fund created in 2018.
Any questions here, colleagues? This is we saw a very similar slide last year, which just obviously itemized all of the current municipal loans, if you will, to that have been taken to finance a wide range of initiatives here. So I don't see here, Ms. Dunlop, County Road 43. We certainly know County Road 43 has a sizable commitment from the municipality of North Grenville. I'm assuming that those dollars might be leveraged in future years once we are fully engaged in our aspects of the project. Is that right?
Yes, Your Worship. There are a few items that were wiped off the debt chart from the 2023 payments, and there will be some coming in the future, such as County Road 43, such as Riverside Park, and also the wastewater treatment plant will be debt financed projects that are longer term in nature, that serve a benefit and a greater need over many decades.
And they're not captured here because we're not at the stage where we need to debt finance, correct?
That is correct, Your Worship. We cash manage projects in the earlier stages. We usually wait till one, it benefits us from a repayment schedule, a repayment interest rate, as well as when the project is complete so we can go from construction to an asset.
Great, thanks. So I have Deputy Mayor, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you to the CAO or the Deputy Director of Finance. This last page that we landed on, Kemptville Campus, That's what we, 228,000 is the debt financing for 2024, and the end date is 2048. Do we know what's outstanding? What's the total debt, rather than this is the payment this year, but what's the amount of the debt that we're working down?
Through you, Madam Mayor, I would say we do know, and I can get you those numbers for the next meeting.
Very much.
Any other questions at this stage on this list in particular? Not seeing any, so we'll move on.
Thank you, Your Worship. Next, thank you. The property tax rate has three components: education, county, and municipal. There has been no indication of an increase in the educational component. The United Counties is currently working and going through budget deliberations and has a proposed tax rate currently of 6.28%, increase along with the municipal proposed increase at 3.5%. Next slide. The tax bill does not all go to the municipality. Although we collect the property tax bills at the municipality, we send 12% away for education, 35% to the county, which leaves 53% for residential, front-facing municipal government operations. This slide also indicates that the anticipated average assessment value for a home in the $400,000 range, accommodating for the 3.5 proposed municipal, 6.28 county, which has again been a proposed, not a final rate, to be an average increase per household of $189 per year. Next slide.
Yes, go ahead. Go ahead.
I appreciate the speed that we're going through this, but we're calculating an education, oh, that's education, that's the percentage, yeah.
Great, and Ms. Dunlop is correct. We are just at the beginning of budget deliberations at the United Counties, so that 6.28% could go down a little or up a little. So it is at this point just an approximation.
The next 11 slides are departmental operating budgets. I will highlight each department, and any questions can be directed at the appropriate department head. Office of the CAO, expenses at $790,079, which includes the taxation revenue for all other departments. Operationally, this office covers human resources, communication, tourism, economic development, and others.
I'm just looking for hands. Any hands on this particular slide? Not seeing any, so we'll move on. Thanks.
The next slide, which is finance, with expenses of $1,544,663, covers all financial operations, including payroll, front reception operations, budgeting, reporting, payments, and receivables.
Any questions here, colleagues? Not seeing any? All right.
Next slide is corporate services, with expenses of $1,888,069. Covers the clerk's office, IT and software, strategic initiatives, and other incentives such as the CIP program, physician recruitment, and the conservation authorities.
Carry on.
Next slide is the building division. It is a standalone budget based on the building fees that are collected from permits. They have expenses of $916,677, which covers the building department operations of all inspectors, softwares, and administrative support.
Ms. Dunlop, might I ask, because we know our building officials are extremely busy and may in fact become that much more busy in the coming months and years. Operationally, in terms of the number of building officials we have, do you feel that we're sufficiently equipped given what we expect to be in terms of our growth. And that's, I think, becoming evident through the establishment of Mattamy Homes, that particular subdivision, among others.
If I may, Madam Mayor, if I can get Director Martin to answer that question?
Thank you, Your Worship. So at this time, we're not recommending any increase to staffing positions based on what we're forecasting out. We did have a lower volume of permits in 2023 compared to other years, mostly due to market conditions, but we are anticipating that to pick up in 2024. We'll continue to monitor on an annual basis where we're at from a service delivery model when it comes to the number of building officials that we have, and as needed, we will request that those positions come forward in future budget years. But moving into 2024, we've just, we're in the process of recruiting 2 vacant positions that we still have, and are anticipating 2 individuals for already approved positions to come in, which would bring our complement to 7 building officials, or sorry, 6 building officials and a building clerk. So we feel prepared going into this year, and we continue to look at ways in which we can improve our service delivery model by working with some of the larger builders where they have more standardized builds that they do, and they might have 8 or 9 models that they use, and trying to get some pre-approvals through first. So that way the permit process is that much faster when they do apply.
Thank you, that's helpful.
Next slide is council. This is the expense of you, our elected officials. With an expense of $279,799, this covers the expenses of council as a whole.
Looks like we're a bargain. Cheapest.
Yeah, there we
The
go.
cheapest line item in the whole budget. All right.
Next slide. Parks, Recreation, and Culture, with expenses of $2,293,354, covers the operation of all the parks, vehicles, staffing, utilities, and service contracts, including the library grant listed as other costs. The library grant on this item is $533,533.
And I'll note that at council last year, we made an effort at the bottom of each slide to articulate some of those contracted property services, contracted professional services, so that it was a little more obvious to the public and to council what those expenses are, because it's a little vague in the chart, but certainly some of it is outlined in the bottom there. Okay. Thank you, Ms. Dunlop. Keep going.
Next slide is police, with expenses of $2,327,490 is the contracted price for the OPP for 2024. Future contract negotiations will be pending following the provincial realignment of detachment boards. Next slide. Yes. Emergency and Protective Services with expenses of $1,493,250 covers all the requirements to operate our fire service and emergency management division. It includes repairs and maintenance and utilities for our fire station, manpower, trucks, and fire prevention systems. Next slide.
Go ahead, Deputy Mayor.
Through you, Madam Mayor, to Chief Oakham, the contracted professional services, that would include design of Fire Station number 2? Is that something that we're incurring costs for this year? Is some preliminary work on the Fire Station number 2?
Yes, contracted professional services are included in that line for what you just mentioned, correct?
All right, carry on, Ms. Dunlop.
Thank you, Your Worship. And next, Public Works, $8,966,219 in expenses for the tangible things in life. This covers waste management, roads, engineering, drainage, storm systems, accessible transit, snow removal, bridges, and the utilities and fuel to support these services.
Deputy Mayor, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you to Director Finley. I just need confirmation that we're increasing staff in terms of technologists next year, and what kind of technologists are we looking for?
So through you, Madam Mayor, currently in the 2024 budget is a drainage technologist. This is a contract position at the moment being proposed. It was a continuation of the 2023 drainage technologist contract position. It is currently unfilled, and that's the additions we have at the moment.
Might I ask, Ms. Dunlop, under contracted professional services, we have the language of accessible transit. I believe you mean for 2024 our NG on-demand transit. Is that correct?
You are correct, Madam Mayor.
Okay. So of course, when the public sees contracted professional services, that may be a bit of a mystery, but again, that line at the end points to some significant contracts, including waste management, obviously NG Transit, for which there is a third-party operator. There's also the reference to service contracts. Might someone be able to illuminate us on what those service contracts are under Public Works?
We have service contracts under Public Works for many things. Again, service contracts can be for waste management. Both the green bin collection and waste are collected under service contract for the municipality, as well as the processing of such. So those are the larger ticket items embedded within.
And that's
the Director of Public Works also has an additional response.
Thank you. It's just, it's obviously nearly $3 million, so it's quite high. And perhaps you could just refresh our memory on what is the value of our waste management contracts annually at this stage. Do we know?
I do have it through the pile here, Madam
Okay.
Mayor. I can get that back to you.
Okay.
One item I did want to point out in regards to that is with the change in the recycling contracts that were now undertaken by the province. That was originally a $490,000 budget, which has now been decreased to $10,000 just for the non-eligible commercial projects that were approved by council. So there has been a significant decrease in cost with the province taking on the recycling contracts. But I can get the overall
Great.
cost for you.
It's great to highlight that in this one instance, obviously, the producer responsibility model has diminished the costs, I guess, for the province, who was in part subsidizing recycling contracts at the municipal level. So nice to see that. All right. Thank you.
Next slide is the North Grenville Municipal Center with expenses of $3,167,061. Covers the building and arena here at 285 County Road 44. The building lease and all the utilities and staff to support its upkeep and operations.
Questions here, colleagues, in terms of the building? And obviously, the costs associated with the municipal center, are they inclusive of the arenas and recreational aspects of this building, or are those costs captured elsewhere?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Those costs are captured here.
Here.
Within
So
this
the cost of
slide.
running the building in its entirety is...
Exactly.
Okay,
Yes,
excellent.
exactly.
So cost of ice and community rooms and all of what we undertake in this building.
Municipal offices, everything.
Excellent, thanks. Thank you, Councillor Wilson.
Through you, Mayor Peckford, to Director Guy. The user fees, revenue user fees, is that increased over last year?
I would have to
Yeah.
take a look at that, Councillor Wilson, to see if it's increased over last year. Staff, I guess at an SMT level, have talked about a user fee project to go through in terms of looking at our user fees. I know PRC staff are planning to do an analysis in 2024 to look at our user fees.
Okay. I just wondered if our, not the fees that are up
Yeah, yes, I
themselves,
understand you're
but are
talking
we
about
getting more
the revenue.
usage? The
Yeah,
yeah.
I would say our ice rentals are pretty much back to a normal state of where they were prior to the COVID. We do have some Saturday evening ice in one of our rinks that we weren't able to sell this year, which was a bit surprising. But for the most part, we're fully booked.
Okay, the other question I would put towards that also is the user fees include the rental of theater, halls, that sort of thing?
That is correct.
Okay,
Yeah.
and same question would apply. Are they up or?
We're certainly seeing an uptake in our hall suites revenue over the last couple of years. I would say that our theater rentals have, they have declined slightly, and they're not rising that I've seen in 2023 anyway.
Okay. And then we'll be reviewing user fees.
That's
for-
correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you to either Director Guy or Deputy Director of Finance, Mr. Dancy. Like my question about Kemptville Campus, I'd be interested in knowing what the outstanding debt is on the municipal center, maybe at a subsequent meeting.
Through you, Madam Mayor, same answer as previous. I can get you those numbers.
Great. Just on the user fee question, I think obviously as much as we're thrilled to see uptake in municipally owned space, we also understand that in certain cases there were user groups who have been dissatisfied with a lack of modernization of things like this theater. So I think we should be cautious about how we look at user fees as we invest. Of course, I think it's appropriate that user fees be reconsidered, but at the same time, we know that in some cases, it may not be the time. So I'm hopeful that any thought about revisiting user fees or increasing user fees takes into account some of the challenges some of our user groups have confronted. So just a comment. My question is, when we go back to Parks, Rec, and Culture, we do have contracted property services and we have contracted professional services. So those costs are independent of what is incurred in this building, correct? So, I mean, obviously we have more than one building or property to manage when it comes to Parks and Rec, but this is obviously a heavily used facility. So when we're contemplating other Parks and Rec facilities or spaces, you're thinking Riverside Park, you're thinking the Armory, and those buildings and facilities are captured in the Parks and Rec budget, is that right? As separate from the costs attached to this facility where there's a significant recreational component.
That is correct.
Okay, I just wanted to make that distinction so we're clear. Councillor Wilson?
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Peckford, quickly. When was the last increase in user fees that we've had? In separate user fees, you know what I mean?
I would have to give that some thought, but it's been a while. I would say we have not increased our rates here at the municipal center for at least 4 years.
Okay, thank you.
I think we've done a sports field rate increase probably within the last 3 years.
Okay, thanks.
I don't see any other hands, so I think we can move on.
And the next slide, last department but not least, the Planning and Bylaw Department, with expenses of $1,414,534, which covers all personnel and operations for the planning functions for growth and existing rate players, plus bylaw, animal control, and enforcement.
Questions here, colleagues? Not seeing any? Okay, move on.
Next slide is the North Grenville Public. The next slide is the North Grenville Public Library, which has a municipal grant of $533,533, but with total expenses of $629,777. So the library does look for all other sources of funding, but this is their overall in regards to operations.
I just want to say I'm thrilled. I know the new CEO isn't here, but I'm thrilled to see the Sunday afternoon library hours come back for working parents in the community. Their only real opportunity to visit the libraries on the weekends, and I think they need a second day to touch base and avail of what is a heavily subsidized but fabulous facility. So great to see that the library is doing that, and please share our feedback. All right. So I think we're transitioning to capital, if I'm not mistaken.
We
Ms.
are.
Dunlap?
This is the fun part. So next slide, capital overview provides total expected expenses of $7,873,693, which on the next slide is broken down by, or on this slide is broken down by category, and the next slide by funding.
So I think, colleagues, you can see both the funding sources for capital as well as Appendix B, capital budget for public works, highlights some of the investments, many, not all, but many of the investments that public works is contemplating. I would like to ask about two requests we have certainly received and flagged with staff. One was a request to build out a sidewalk in Oxford Mills. I know there's a sidewalk, I think, down Water, but there was an email. There were a number of residents who approached us about enhancing the sidewalk network in Oxford Mills. I think you may be aware of that. So just curious to know about that. And of course, with our new long-awaited fabulous roundabout at South Core Drive, we understand that pedestrian connectivity has been contemplated for that roundabout so that there may be the possibility of supporting better walkable, safe passage across the South Gore roundabout to help people get to the play structures and the park. So those are two things that I just wanted to flag as things I didn't see in this budget, if anyone has any comment. Mr. Finley, anything on your end?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I can provide some bit of comment to that. In regards to the Oxford Mills sidewalk, I was not aware of that one, so I'll have to follow up and provide some information on that. In regards to pedestrian activity from the roundabout at South Core to the park, we do have a number listed in there of three multi-use pathway expansion projects that were identified through our transportation master plan. So those are the projects that were brought forward. In looking at that location, it was through the transportation master plan identified as a paved shoulder. So that is something we will have to discuss partially with the county under their jurisdiction to see what options are available. It isn't included in the budget yet in this section, but it's something we can follow up on if that's the desire of council. It would be in addition to what we have currently unless there's changes council wishes to see.
Just going to multi-use pathways, I see the one at Riverside Park. I see the one at County Road 44. Is that the one in front of the campus? No, that's the one just down the road here, right, that would run all the way to River Road. I don't see it. I don't see reference to a third MUP.
If I may, Madam Mayor, the capital projects that are identified under Schedule B or Appendix B here by each department. The directors can highlight a couple projects if you wish, but each and every project does have a breakdown, which is one of the tabs within your binder. The three multi-use paths that Director Finley referred to are included in the MUP expansion projects, $226,000. The one you're referring on County Road 44 is under Parks and Rec. So the three specific MUPs identified under the $226,000 under Public Works are: one, the expansion at Galen's Way; two, the concession road from County Road 44 to Rail Trail, and the expansion in front of the campus on County Road 44 from Alumni right down to the Rail Trail. And the one that we have had discussion run in regards to was the concession. That was the one for discussion. And if I may add one more, the sidewalk priority that Public Works has identified that Oxford Mills, but at a later year. The Bridge Street extension sidewalk between Parkinson and Van Buren was rated as a higher priority.
And that prioritization scale is based on what?
That prioritization scale was based on a connectivity as well as previous discussions with the previous Active Transportation Advisory Committee.
Okay, and just as a quick follow-up, the MUP on Concession Road, which I think is an extension of the multi-use pathway that currently goes from Concession to Prescott, if I'm not mistaken. So the proposed extension is to take it all the way to the rail trail, is that correct? Okay, and I think that's one, if I'm not mistaken, that we've pulled in previous years because council has felt that maybe the MUP might be, or the resources for that MUP might be better deployed in a different location.
Correct, Madam Mayor, and based on the allocation of resources, and I mean physical manpower, we did not actually complete MUPs in the 2023 fiscal year, which is why we're just putting them back on the table.
Including Galen's Way campus in front of County Road 44 and the concession road one, to my memory, didn't in fact advance last year as part of the approved MUPs. Is that right?
It was a value that was included, Your Worship, within the package, but we did not come back as a department with a location, and we ran out of year.
Okay, thanks. All right. Those are my MUP sidewalk questions. Anything else, council colleagues? On Public Works in particular? Capital? Lots of other stuff in here. It's not just about MUPs and sidewalks. Go ahead, Councillor Sullivan.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, through you to, I guess, to the CAO or to Director Finley. The Wellington Road traffic calming, I thought that was in the 2023 budget. So is it carried forward?
Mr. Finley?
So through you, Madam Mayor, that is correct. There was some funds identified for that project. There was some recommendations made, but it still has to go through the process before the exact traffic calming, what the requirements are going to be or what the installation is going to be. So we have carried that forward on this.
Okay, so that 60,000 is not new, not a new expense. It's carried forward from 2023.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Looking for hands, colleagues. I don't need to dominate the discussion. I do have another question. In terms of Stonehaven Assumption, can someone help me, or can someone explain why there are costs attached to the assumption of that subdivision?
I can help you out, Madam Mayor.
Excellent. Thank you, Mr. Finley.
So for that project, in working with the developer for the final assumption of phases of that subdivision, those contract discussions have ended, and with the municipality moving through to bring the development into its final stages, that it's what we would normally assume. There is costs associated with that we do intend to take back to the developer to recoup those costs. This is just identifying those potential costs that we may have to undertake and then go through a process of recouping that from the developer.
Typically, we wouldn't incur this amount to assume a subdivision, right? Is that correct?
That is correct.
Right.
Typically, all the costs associated for assumption are on the developers to complete, and once they've done all the work to municipal satisfaction, we do assume it, and then any maintenance afterwards is our responsibility. But for actual capital costs, to get to that point is typically not municipal responsibility.
And are you fairly confident that 400K will be recovered, if you will?
That's through our best assessments at the time.
Okay.
Last year we did some additional investigations into the condition of some of the assets there. So until we kind of know the results of those, I can't put a definitive on that, but that is what we best know at this time.
Deputy Mayor, please, or Councillor Sullivan, which hand is it? Okay, Deputy Mayor. Okay, it looks like you're pointing to Councillor Sullivan. Go ahead.
I often do, but through you, Madam Mayor, to Director Finley. we're about to complete or have completed a stormwater master plan, and what kind of impact might that have on the 2024 budget? And do we anticipate funds for any work that comes as a result of the recommendations?
So through you, Madam Mayor, we are still in the investigation process of that stormwater master plan. That ran, we had some field work to complete that ran up into October. So the plan is not completed yet. We are anticipating to have that plan completed this year. That is identified through the operational budget, through those professional contracted services. There is $277,000 for that project. So that's the stage we're at the moment, is getting all the data collection to our consultant and then looking for the results once they can analyze that information. Most likely, by the time we do that, we didn't put in funds at this time for recommendations that we don't have yet, so that piece isn't in. Most likely will be in the 2025 budget deliberations.
Great, thank you.
Can I also ask about the 2 PXOs? I believe it's 2 pedestrian crossover PXOs. Mr. Finley, do we have a sense of the locations? I think many of us have been fielding requests for PXOs both downtown and on County Road 44.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. For that one, we haven't designated a specific location for that PXO. It's one PXO with two setups, because you have for both sides of the road, so it is one location. We are determining, we will determine if that's approved of the best location to install that crossing at this moment.
Yes.
So in regards to the County Road 44 PXO, the regional intent was to put a PXO at the Settlers Way crossing as part of the County Road 44 MUP expansion. I understand that Director Guy is working with the consultant in regards to looking at the options based on the increased AADT, so the average daily traffic, as well as the speed of the road. They will have to make an assessment on what's level, so we will have to try. That will be independent of what Public Works PXOs are.
So the one for County Road 44 is not this. We have the resources for a second PXO is what I'm hearing. Elsewhere, so, is that correct?
Through you, Your Worship, we're looking at what the PXO has to be. If it's a standard PXO, that's one thing. If it has to be a full signalized crossing, the dollar values will be much more, so we will have to assess that. Either we can accommodate it within the County Road 44 MUP budget, or we'll have to look for additional funds.
Indeed. Okay. Helpful. And certainly just to flag that I know that in Old Town Kemptville, there has been significant concern about a lack of safe crossing from ASA over to the other side where many businesses are located. So I've understood that that location was something the municipality was considering for a PXO. So I just want to flag that for your consideration. And just quickly, I see new streetlights. Is there a specific location, or are we just putting those in because it's unusual to see streetlights in here, so I'm just curious.
So, Madam Mayor, those are just a lighting of an intersection streetlight. The two locations we are looking at this point are at County Road 24 and Town Line Road, and at the intersection of County Road 44 and Bedell Road. Those have been the two proposed based on our priority planning at the moment.
And we assume the costs, even though they partly service County Road, if we were to put streetlights in, that's our jurisdiction?
That is correct, because they're lighting the intersection that we're looking for, the road entrance that we're looking for.
Right. And could you just repeat those locations again?
No problem. It's County Road 24 and Town Line Road, that intersection, as well as the intersection of County Road 44 and Bedell.
And again, even though part of the intersection is with a county road, it is at our cost that traffic lights would be put up?
Correct, for the lighting of it, yes.
Okay. Thanks. Deputy Mayor?
Yeah, a question maybe for my council colleagues, but directed to you. If we're looking at a single PXO and we're not sure of which location, wouldn't it be prudent to budget for 2 PXOs?
Yeah.
So I would request or suggest that we double that line item from 16 to 32.
We can certainly make the adjustment. The one item I will mention is this is for a base typical PXO crossing, so it is purely a signage. There isn't lighting with it or the flashing lights. This is purely for signs and the road painting and a base PXO crossing. So if there are other, depending on the requirements of a crossing, we may need to adjust that as well.
You know, what triggered the question was the mayor reminded me that ASA, the crossing at Prescott, I don't know if the counties weigh in and cover any costs, but I think that's our cost. I'm not sure what kind of PXO that would be. I'm assuming we may be able to accommodate it in that line item, but maybe not. So my question is whether we should increase or not.
Indeed. Okay, I'll recognize Councillor Sullivan.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you to Director Finley. Has there been a PXO considered for County Road 19 somewhere between 44 and down at Ryan's Well? Because all the new building, the shopping, everything that's going on down there, it's very difficult for people to cross County Road 19. They'd have to walk on, well, they have to cross to get even to where the bollards are that would kind of make a safe shoulder to walk or ride your bike on. So the safety net is on the side of the road, the other side of the road, so you have to cross the road to get there.
Mr. Finley or Ms. Dunlop?
If I may, Madam Mayor, one of the expansions as part of the County Road 43 is a sidewalk multi-use path down the western side of County Road 19 from 43 down to Ryan's Well. At Ryan's Well, there is a crossing. As we know, in the last few years, we have had those requests of getting from Ryan's Well to Starbucks, to Mucho Burrito, etc. So we will be looking at what the options are in the future. We did do a study last year. Was the idea we cross the linear storm facility to get to the back of Canadian Tire. That's proved to be a little harder to accomplish. So I think we have to look at the eastern side of County Road 19 in the future. But we need to get 43 and 19 out of the way as a temporary measure. Public Works has installed, with the approval of the county, those bollards on the eastern side. But again, they're seasonally based. Snowplows don't do well with bollards. So we will have to continue and look at that. But when one of the developments behind Giant Tiger was also raised, the idea of a crossing has been revisited, and it is something that is a live discussion, but no study has been completed to date.
Okay, thank you.
Go ahead, Councillor Strachan.
Thank you. Through Madam Mayor, this is just from the Deputy Mayor's comment regarding Asa Street and the crossing there. I think perhaps the PXO is not necessarily the first step, but removing the courtesy crossing there would be a good first step, because that means nothing to anybody, especially cars. So, you know, PXO may be the follow-on step, but removing that courtesy crosswalk to an official crosswalk would possibly be a cheaper way to take the first step, and might be more expedient as well, just as a suggestion.
Certainly, I think we've all fielded quite a number of inquiries about about the absence of a safe pedestrian crossing in that area around Asa Street. So, you know, quite frankly, a pedestrian crossover that doesn't have some lit traffic controlled feature is of concern to me, because traffic volumes are high in the municipality. So whatever is contemplated here, I'm concerned that the 16K is certainly insufficient even to accommodate one, if obviously any study on County Road 44 around a Settlers Grant crossing is going to demand, I think, a higher level of crossing than may have been contemplated in the grant application for the MUP. So perhaps this is a line item that can be recontemplated. I certainly think it's the case that the community embraces the PXOs that we've been able to put up more recently, and they do offer a level of safety that I do think we owe our residents. So perhaps you can take another look at this line, Mr. Finley.
Not a problem, Madam Mayor. We can take that one back
Okay.
and come back with another recommendation. We will note with the Asa Street crossing, there is some considerations because there is the traffic lights already at the intersection of Rubin and Prescott. There are certain distances of where a PXO crossing with lights should be in relation to those stops. So there are some considerations we will have to work out with the county in regards to where that could be, but we will definitely take that back and come back with a different recommendation.
Indeed, thank you. Councillor Sullivan?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, through you to Director Finley. So $16,000 for a pedestrian crossover, that is without the lights?
Without the light.
So at the corner of Bridge Street and Wellington Parkinson, all there is 2 signs and some paint on the road. Did that cost $16,000 for 2 signs and paint on the road?
Mr. Finley?
Through you, Madam Mayor,
I want a new job.
so there is a number of considerations. There is the warning signs ahead. There's the actual crossing signs. There is the paint on the side that is expensive. I also have to look into, although that one didn't need lighting, there was lighting considerations that had to be taken in front of it as well. I don't have the exact cost of that crossing, but that is the expectation based on what has been evaluated.
Whoa, okay. So as Councillor Strachan mentioned, and we've discussed this at the Active Transportation Committee meeting, or advisory committee, the courtesy crossover sign or crosswalk sign, I think there's 2 of them on Prescott Street, and they really mean to drivers, stop if you feel like it. It's just a courtesy. But that crossover, crosswalk at Bridge Street at Wellington and Parkinson is very effective. People do stop there. And so I would strongly recommend getting rid of those courtesy signs and just make that a crosswalk. And I don't think it's going to cost $16,000 to do that, even for both of them. So
Certainly, Mr. Finley can take this under advisement and can update us on perhaps the specificity for these PXOs that are being contemplated.
yeah, I know that you could do
Okay.
more with 16.
I do have a request to take a short break. So why don't we finish Public Works and we'll just take a 7-minute break? Right, we are still on Public Works, is that correct? Yeah. Deputy Mayor, are you with us? We're just wrapping up Public Works and then we're going to take a 7-minute break. Okay, excellent. So we can see that there's various road projects at the cost of just over $1.5 million, a number of bridges and culverts, some additional heavy fleet for Public Works. Could you describe what that heavy fleet is, Mr. Finley?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, so the heavy fleet is the replacement of our backhoe currently and replacement of a sidewalk machine.
Okay, to the tune of $385,000, eh? That's
Correct. That also taking into account what we think we can get back from reselling those pieces of equipment as well.
okay. Excellent. Thank you very much. And then I just wanted to ask the sidewalk, Bridge Street, Parkinson to Van Buren. Can you describe that in a little more detail? So it's on Bridge Street, it's coming from Van Buren up to Parkinson, which is a fairly short distance, correct? That's not a long distance?
I don't have the exact measurement with me, but there's enough of a stretch there that we also have to look at the crossing. There's because of the old truck center, well, the truck center that's still there. There's their long entrance ways to cross or to go through.
Okay. So that would add to the cost.
Correct.
Of the $165,000. I'm only asking because knowing that stretch well, it is a fairly short distance. It's great to see it in the budget. I just was curious at why it would cost that much, but other things are being contemplated.
Correct.
Okay. And of course, we see automated speed enforcement, and I understand the county's is now working collaboratively to potentially support the rollout of automated speed enforcement in community safety zones only. And Mr. Finley, do you think that's a good estimation of what it might cost us to bring automated speed enforcement to North Grenville?
This initial amount is more to get the investigation and potentially a startup into the automated speed enforcement. We do anticipate, without getting into the details in further years, there will be greater costs in this for implementation. But this is just purely for an investigative methods to see what can be done for North Grenville.
Okay, great. Thank you for that clarification. Okay, Councillor Sullivan?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, through you to Director Finley. Under the miscellaneous projects, the Habitat Pollinator Garden of $10,000, is that something new for 2024? I've seen what already exists, and it's like pretty small plots of land worked up and planted. So I'm just wondering, what is that? Where is it? Does that come
I think
under
that's
the?
for a second pollinator garden, is that correct,
Yes,
Mr.
so
Finley?
through you, Madam Mayor, correct. This is a bit of a phase 2 for the pollinator garden. So phase 1 from last year was called a pollinator garden and the recommended amount was approved amount was $10,000 for that. Through the Environmental Action Advisory Committee, the pollinator garden did kind of evolve into a bit of a habitat garden. So it wasn't just for pollinators, it was to investigate further species that could sustain different growth models and items like that. Through that, the committee did not spend $10,000. It was less than $2,000 for the implementation of that. They had a lot of volunteers to help them out. So what they are looking for is the next phase. They've identified a number of municipal sites where they feel they can expand this initiative, and that's what they are looking for is the $10,000. So it would be a top up from what was spent of last year, which again it was under $2,000 to expand this initiative is what they're looking for.
Okay, so is this an additional 10,000, or did they get 10,000 last year and only use 2, so 8 is carried forward?
Correct.
Okay, so are they looking for 10,000 every year, or can other advisory committees look to get an extra 10,000 each year too?
I think in this case, Councillor Sullivan, this was a priority of Public Works, and the Environmental Action Committee lent a tremendous amount of volunteer labor, expertise to getting the garden going. So I think it's premature to assess whether or not this is overly generous or just right. I think we can certainly have Mr. Finley speak with the Environmental Action Committee to bring more clarity, but there's been a lot of conversation about the value of a second garden. So
Was there some funding for this that we got
no, I do not
towards?
believe there was funding. No, it was
No?
entirely funded by the municipality, but more to the point, it was there was so much volunteer labor and expertise that was offered to make it happen. Councillor Strakian, go ahead.
Thank you, through Madam Mayor. And to answer your question, Councillor Sullivan, I think to showcase this as simply the pollinator garden, I think or as the habitat garden may seem a little bit too much to pay for it, perhaps. I think that's sort of where your questions are leading. And I think that to understand the habitat garden is beyond just planting a number of plants and creating a little space in different parks. It's the education that's coming along with this to provide education down the road for residents about naturalized spaces, what appropriate plants, what plants are appropriate for certain areas and so on that they can use in their own areas to avoid invasive species. There's also a very strong education component that is being tied into Oxford on Rideau with the students there to create programming to help them get their hands in the dirt and actually take ownership of that and understand as well. So I think there's a broad, all-encompassing piece to this that I think will carry on for benefits for current residents as well as in in this case, future generations as well, to have a bigger and broader understanding and stake ownership in what is happening there. So I think there's a lot to that. So it is a significant investment perhaps, but I think it's going to be broad-reaching.
So before we move on to Parks and Rec, is there anything else for Public Works? All right, sounds good. Then we will move on to Parks and Rec, and Director Guy has offered to walk us through those projects. So go ahead, Director Guy.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. You see the list up there. I'll start with the Parks Division of Parks, Recreation, and Culture. So we have the multi-use pathway for Riverside Park. This project started a couple of years ago with some design, and this past fall we were able to get the base in for the pathway, and we'll be doing the paving in 2024, as well as adding a couple of outdoor fitness stations. So that's what that amount of money you see there is for. The County Road 44 MUP has already started. The design work has begun with Novatech Engineering. That will continue in 2024 with the probability of starting construction this year as well. Next is the Enbridge Courtyard, which I think most of council is aware. We did receive donation of $50,000 from Enbridge to do a courtyard within Riverside Park. We're going to get those that courtyard in place for 2024. Heron's Nest Park at the Temple subdivision has started. We have been working with the consultant on a concept plan. It's been reviewed by staff. We will be bringing it to various advisory committees, and there is a public consultation session scheduled for January 31st. We will get to detailed design and construction in 2024. The South Gore Pavilion accessibility upgrades, we are going to be putting accessibility features on the washroom doors, as well as adding some accessible picnic tables within that park. We are adding a compact tractor with some attachments to assist with our parks operations. The Riverside Park parking lot improvements, we have some drainage issues within that parking lot. This is going to be an in-house project with Public Works to complete in the spring of 2024. If there's any questions, you can ask then, and then I can move on to, I think facilities might be next.
I think this is a good time, so let's stop here. Okay, go ahead, Councillor Wilson.
To you, Mayor Peckford, to Director Guy, just quickly. Do any of these projects, is this after grants, or have we received grants towards these?
Through you, Madam Mayor, to Councillor Wilson, we have received grants for the multi-use pathway at Riverside Park of $100,000. We did receive funding for the multi-use pathway for the County Road 44. I believe the total amount was around $986,000 total, but it is, that's over 3 years. Looking, as I mentioned, we had their donation from Enbridge, and that would be it as far as the parks list goes in terms of grants.
Okay, so all of this totaled up is including grants or without grants?
Would be including grants.
Okay.
But bear in mind, some of these, the first two projects are carryover projects, so some of the money has been spent previously.
And so to clarify, the multi-use pathway, County Road 44, the 986,000 we see here is inclusive of the grant or is not?
That is not all of the grant. That is some of our own money, reserves, DCs, as well as.
And what we see here doesn't take into account the grant? This is what we're spending?
No, it takes in account some of the grant, not all of a grant. There's a combination of grant, DCs, reserves.
Okay.
We've spread the grant award over 2023, 2024, and then 2025.
Okay. So there is some grant money in here?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
Understood. Okay.
I think in your justification sheet, you'll see the breakdown.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you. Can I ask about the Enbridge Courtyard at Riverside Park? I think we were hoping for that courtyard to provide a shade element? Is that correct? Is that,
Yes, that is correct. We're looking at a shade element. We're looking at some park benches. We're looking at the potential of some outdoor barbecue pits.
Right.
As well.
Okay.
But it will include a shade structure.
okay, and we're doing all of this for 50,000?
That is the plan.
That is the intention,
That
and
is
that's
the
your
int-
understanding?
That is the intention.
Okay, but there will be sufficient shade in that structure from your understanding?
It'll be, it'll be a shade structure that's already built. We will be looking to purchase that through one of our recreation companies that we work with in terms
Okay.
of where we get our park benches and where we get our bike racks and things like that.
Okay, okay.
We'll likely in the end bring a plan forward to council to take a look at, as well as our contacts at Enbridge to make sure that they're happy with what we want to do.
Okay. And if I can ask about Heron's Nest Park, of course, you flagged that this is, would be in very close proximity to the Tempo neighborhood, and that we, obviously, as I understand it, we've been able to access land from a neighboring property owner who plans to develop down the road, so she's given some of the land to facilitate the establishment of this park. So the 350,000 is not for the land, it is for the equipment?
For the outfitting of the park.
Okay.
Yes.
And in your mind, that includes at this stage, what does the outfitting of the park mean to you?
Well, if you look behind you, you'll actually
I
see
didn't
the
see that.
conceptual drawing,
Gotcha.
that's a part of the conceptual drawing. So there will be some passive space in there. There'll be a play structure. There will be some park benches. There'll be a small play area for younger children. And I said, some walking paths within the park, and then a general sort of passive grassy area where children or young youth can kick a soccer ball or throw
Okay.
a Frisbee around.
Great, thanks. Just one last thing, Council, but please raise your hand if you have more. The South Gord Pavilion accessibility upgrades, wonderful. I just want to go back to a conversation, Director Guy, that we might have had a couple of years ago. It was from a soccer family where one of the parents was wheelchair bound. They had requested our consideration for those kind of beach-style mats that would allow for a wheelchair or a scooter to travel out into the soccer field so they could see their child play. I know that certainly at Baxter Beach now, there is one there to also facilitate, access to the beach for mobility devices. And I'm just curious, if we're making some parts of the park accessible, has that request ever been advanced, given that conversation from a couple of years ago?
It has not been advanced. I think at the time, we did look into what we could possibly do. I don't think we were able to come up with something that we felt was sufficient, but now that you've brought it up again, I can add it to something to look into, and we can bring something back to council for consideration.
I think that would be wonderful. We have a well-subscribed soccer program, and it seems that those mats are that facilitate mobility devices are being more commonly used, and I think that was one of the suggestions at the time, that perhaps the soccer field could kind of run one down the middle, if you will, so that there was better accessibility. Particularly, as you might recall, it was a family who had a parent in a wheelchair and who was unable to basically watch their children's games because they couldn't access the field.
I do recall us having a conversation with the soccer president at the
Yes.
time about, looking at some alternatives or ideas of what we could do for that, whether that the mats, as you suggested, or we even talked about building pathways within,
Right.
in between some of the soccer fields. But I think the concern there was taking away from the actual field of play.
Indeed. Well, perhaps there's a simpler option available, but I'd really encourage you to think about that as we move forward. Councillor Sullivan, I see your hand.
Thank you. I do recall this conversation coming up at the Accessibility Advisory Committee as well. And I think there was an effort made by the Soccer Association to schedule games close to the parking lot so that it would be much easier for that parent to be able to watch the game from kind of the edge of the parking lot.
Okay. And I appreciate that, but as our community grows, some of those needs will only increase, so perhaps it's something that can be contemplated. But glad to know the Soccer Association seems somewhat flexible. Okay, those are my questions on parks. Seeing no other hands, you can move on.
Okay. Let me get to my list here. I don't know where I did with it. Anyway, so we have, we're looking at an ice resurfacer replacement. The end of useful life, one of our Zambonis is ready to be put out to pasture, so to speak. In the past, we've done a detailed scope of work and done a tender. We're going to do it a little bit differently this time around. We're going to do an actual request for proposal and get proposals for different companies. This way we can actually look at the potential of adding an electric machine as opposed to a propane operated machine. So that's what we're going to do there. We're looking at meeting room 2 upgrades similar to what we have in meeting room 1 so that we can successfully do hybrid meetings in the second meeting room. Our meeting rooms are getting very much used by internal staff who are requesting those types of amenities within meeting room 2. As you're aware, we're looking at a theater lighting console. New lighting board for performance lighting here within the theater, as well as replacing the 14 speakers within the theater as well.
Any questions on that? Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you to Director Guy. The theater lighting console, does that reflect our recent conversation with stakeholders that we had?
Yes, it does.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, anything else? Of course, Director Guy, you also have facilities project name for outside of the NG Municipal Center. Do you want to run through those as well?
Sure.
Okay.
So we have pool upgrades. That is an automatic chemical feed system. So it's just an automatic when we're putting chlorine into our pool. So it'll be more automatic instead of manually putting chlorine into the pool. It's been something that we've been looking at for a couple of years, but we decided to wait until the work was done over at the pool before we did that. We've talked about the Armory building. The Maplewood Hall roof repair we're going to be replacing the steel roof at the Maplewood Hall to complete the rehabilitation of that project. We're going to be doing some mill work at the Kernahan Garage on the EMS side, basically replacing the kitchen countertops and cabinets in that facility. And fleet and other facilities, we are going to get a salt and sander attachment for one of our vehicles that will assist the Public Works Department with snow removal and clearing of this facility.
Good. And the Armory building, the 350K for this year, would allow for the establishment of those additional washrooms. What's envisioned for that 350?
That is, so part of the 350 is the $100,000 grant, and then it's the change of use that we're going to be doing there. So we need to do some design of what we need to do there. We need a second exit from the second floor. We need additional washrooms, and we need better accessibility just in terms of entering the building. And we've also allowed some dollars in there to look at upgrading the floor within that facility. It's a concrete floor. We'd like to do something with the floor that will make it more amenable for community groups to use for rentals.
And so does the 350 allow you to do all of what you've just outlined? You think so?
That's our hope,
Okay,
yes.
excellent. Okay, good. Any other questions, council colleagues, at this stage? Okay. Just something around Riverside Park that jogged my memory as you were talking. I know that there's been a lot of interest, Director Guy, on what will happen once we take the ice out of the newly established refrigerated outdoor rink. So have you contemplated those other uses once there's no longer ice in the ODR?
Certainly, we're contemplating basketball.
Okay.
Whether that would be portable nets or we would look at putting some permanent posts
Right.
sort of outside of the boards with an overhanging net.
Yep.
I think for 2024, we're probably looking at something portable. There's, we can offer ball hockey there, general ball hockey.
Okay.
Similar to what we have with the outdoor rink. You know, that would be just kids coming and using the facility for ball hockey. And I think you'll see it be used for special events, Canada Day festivities, whether that's for a beer garden or something else. But we haven't considered, and you know, this would be more of a question for the community, I guess. We haven't considered pickleball court lines, but we could if that was something that the community thought they might want for that space.
Okay. So just because I expect there'll be a strong appetite to use that space once the ice is out, I'm assuming you have it on your radar to at least explore the options and create some possibilities for this summer, because no doubt now that people are well aware of it, I'm sure they'll embrace the opportunity to see it used right between May and or April and October, November. Okay.
Yeah.
Councillor Strachan?
I guess through you, Madam Mayor, to Director Guy, I would, and when you're thinking about the other uses of the space, I would encourage you to find ones that aren't already accessible in other places. I know pickleball is popular, but there are places for pickleball right now. There are very few basketball courts that are publicly available that aren't already on school grounds or otherwise inaccessible. And so I think if you, as you're considering that, if there's some weight given to activities that aren't already available within the community public space, I think that would be appreciated. Thank you.
Noted. Thank you.
Okay, so Councillor Sullivan.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and through you to Director Guy. Just for the benefit of people who may be watching and who have been expecting that there'd be railings in the Arena 1, you can just confirm that this is a carry forward, an item that's for 2024, carried forward from previous years. I think 2022 was when it was approved in the budget. And the possibility of having seats and maybe some funding opportunities to help pay for seats in the municipal center, or in the Arena 1. So seats and railings, I think, are something that people would like to see.
Through you, Madam Mayor, to Councillor Sullivan. So we do have a current contract in place for arena railings. It's been a very slow process. We have been, there's been some disagreements, I would say, with the scope of work, and we're working through that with the contractor. They assure us that they will see a way to get those railings in place in 2024, and I will see that that gets done in 2024 as well. So that's where we're at with that project. As far as the seats go, I know we've had lots of discussions with respect to seats, individual seats, and the potential of donations or some sort of naming rights. We've reached out to certain companies, thought we had some agreements in place that kind of, you know, fell through. I think at the last count, we were looking at 250 individual seats. That was going to cost around $25,000. It is not part of the draft budget for Parks and Recreation right now for seating in Arena 1. So if that was council's desire, I guess you would express that to me. But that's where we're at with the arena seating.
And on those railings, those long-awaited railings, are you expecting Director Guy to pivot into a different approach, given where things stand at the current juncture?
We had a meeting with the contractor just before Christmas, and expressed our concern and the delays in this project and that we had to see it through. I have received also some other advice as to where we can go with this if it continues to not go the way we want it to. So we'll be making a decision on that relatively soon, whether we're going to pivot to another form of getting railings in Arena 1.
certainly having been in, I don't know, 20 arenas in the last month, certainly it seems that there are many different ways to look at railings. And I know every arena has its own constraints, but I've seen lots of, I think, best practices, if you will, even where there are some limitations. So, you know, obviously, if the current plan doesn't materialize, I'm hopeful that there can be a quick pivot. I'd also just like to note, and probably not for this year, but I would like to put it on your horizon. As I travel the various rinks across Eastern Ontario, I am increasingly seeing the use of those rink dividers, just given the amount of hockey games that are played, I think for kids 10 and under with half ice. Certainly in many different locations, there appears to be a good system for those rink dividers. They certainly create many possibilities in terms of efficient use of the ice, accommodating games, what have you. So I've always wondered why we haven't pursued it here. So once you get through the trials and tribulations of arena railings, perhaps there can be another conversation about those. All right.
I have made a note of that.
Okay. I think we're done Parks and Rec, is that right? All right, so we're going to go on to Chief Oakham is here, and we have EPS.
Thank you, Mayor Peckford. So for capital budget for 2024, as I mentioned in my earlier remarks, there are fewer capital asset projects for this year. This is actually due to some hard work and support in maintaining our 20-year capital budgets. The projects before council this evening are three capital projects, first being personal protective equipment. That's our annual replacement program of personal protective equipment the firefighters are outfitted with that has reached its 10-year maximum lifespan or damaged equipment. So this is our replacement program. The second project is firefighting equipment and tools. This is a budget line that contains a number of smaller replacement items, including fittings, connectors, firefighting nozzles, gas detectors, hand tools. We're replacing some dry suits for our water rescue team that are leaking. And we're looking at purchasing some pagers for our new recruitment program in 2024. And the third project is to replace a positive pressure ventilation fan. The current fan that we had in use failed at an emergency scene. It was a gas-operated, gas-driven fan. We are going to move to a more greener version of equipment. It's an electric positive pressure fan that contains rechargeable battery, so no use for gasoline and engines and oil, that it'll be readily charged and readily available. And those are our capital projects for this coming year, or for this year.
Thank you. Any comments or questions, colleagues? Compared to the other capital spends, you're doing very well here, Chief Oakham. It's very restrained.
It is, and as I did mention in my opening remarks, we do have a few carryover projects that weren't finalized in 2023 due to deliveries, but we're hopeful for 2024.
Sounds good. Thank you very much. I think if I'm not seeing any hands, so I think we can move on to water and wastewater. Is that correct? And Mr. Finley, are you handling that? Is that okay? Fire away.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So what we have before you will be the presentation for the 2024 water and wastewater budget. We do want to note that this budget is based on user fees. It is not dependent on taxation, so it is a balanced budget based on the fees that we charge through our water rates. So the first slide we have, similar to the other presentations, is a few highlights from 2023. So we did complete the tender for the water pollution control plant expansion. That closed mid-December and is currently under review. We did a number of site works, pipe work, at our Van Buren pump station. So that was some aging infrastructure that needed to be replaced. Along with the concession road water main replacement has been substantially completed. We are finishing out some deficiencies in items in 2024 as weather crept up on us, as well as replacement of a section of sanitary main on Victoria Street. And from some asset management items, we did some roof replacements at the Equinel booster pumping station and the Equinel sanitary pump station. In regards to some 2024 objectives, we are looking to update our servicing master plan. The last master plan that we had was issued in 2015, so it's important that we do this update for the growth and development of the service area. We are intending, excuse me, to present to council to award the water pollution control plan expansion construction. That report, again, we just closed the tender. The evaluations are currently underway, and we are looking to bring a report to council in February regarding that project. A carry forward is the Kernahan Pump Station pipe works replacement. So this was tendered along with the Van Buren pumping station pipe works. We're hoping to have that station completed as well, replacing and optimizing some of the layout in that station. We do have some aging items in regards to the digester gas system flame arresters and valves that needs to be replaced at the water pollution control plant. The HVAC at our Bridge Street sanitary pump station needs to be replaced, as well as the microscope at our lab. We are looking to complete an isolation valve design and installation at the Colonnade sanitary pump station. So what this will do will allow staff to isolate the reservoir that's there to allow maintenance to be done, alleviating any waste coming into the station. We are looking to purchase a leak detection kit, which will allow us to help narrow down any leaks in our water mains, again, improving our service so we can fix those before they become bigger issues, as well as when we do identify a leak, potentially locate it a little faster, so we're not spending more time on site trying to find where the leak is. Another objective that we have is to continue with our improvements for inflow and infiltration. As we saw during the freezing rainstorm that happened last year in April, we did see a lot of storm water enter into our system. It did surcharge certain areas of our sanitary collection system. So we will continue with that program to identify areas that we can eliminate those flows from coming into the system. Next slide, please. What we wanted to present here is just to give council an idea of what the average residential consumption is based on an average single unit residential cost. So the way we do bill is we do have a base rate, which is $47 per month. And then we do our billing based on consumption, which we are set up into a block rate of the first 12, up to the first 12 cubic meters of water used is charged at one rate, $4.01, and anything above that is charged at a rate of $5.01. This was approved in 2020 during the rate study that was presented at that time. We will see, based on the rate study, we anticipated that the average single unit residential home would use approximately 143 cubic meters per year, or just under 12 cubic meters per month. What we are seeing is that is what is happening. Residents are using about, on average, 11.45 cubic meters monthly, which has been a slow decrease. When we look back in 2021, the average monthly consumption was just over 12 cubic meters, 12.33, and then 2022 decreased to 11.53, and again now in 2023 to 11.45. So that may have been part of the changes from COVID, people getting out of their houses again, maybe using less as we go through. But that was just to give council an indication that the assumptions made when we determined our rates in the 2020 rate study seem to continue to be showing what users are consuming. Next slide, please. So as was done with the other divisions, we do have the operating budget presented here. We do see some increases through salaries. That was last year, council did approve a new water wastewater technologist position there. Some increases through materials and supplies, contracted property services and professional services. We are seeing some decrease in debt servicing and transfers, but it's averaging out to about a 2% increase in growth, which does fall in line with what the 2020 rate study was projecting, that we would have a 2% increase in our expenses through this year. Next slide. So this.
Mr. Finley, just one sec. Deputy Mayor would like to ask a question. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you very much, Madam Mayor. Through you to Director Finley. Contracted professional services in 2024, that is all or some of that goes towards updating the service master plan?
Through you, Madam Mayor, that is correct. There's about 80,000 that is allocated to update that master plan.
And do we expect it to be completed in 2024?
Correct.
And it'll have recommendations that'll become capital costs in 2025?
Through you, Madam Mayor, that is correct. We'll have a list. It'll identify the needs of our infrastructure with the new projected growth numbers that were provided through the planning department. We'll use that to anticipate over, typically these are over the next 20 years, what infrastructure is needed to support that growth, as well as identify certain areas where we may need some capital infrastructure updates as well. So there'll be a list of recommendations to support budgets as we move further.
So in the past, we've referred to it as a Stantec report, correct?
That's correct.
And who are we using for this one?
It hasn't been issued yet, so we will issue it this year and have it completed this year. So once we have a consultant,
Okay.
that will be brought forward.
Great, thanks.
Mr. Finley, can I ask, the debt servicing and transfers, is there debt we are servicing?
Correct.
And where
Yeah,
is it?
we-
What is the debt specifically?
In about 2 slides, we can go through it, or we can go through it
Okay.
now if you'd like.
No, if you're providing an explanation, I'll just wait for it. Thanks.
Okay. So this slide just again reiterates the previous slide of where the percentages of where the budget is. And we're at the debt servicing now, Madam Mayor. So we have 4 projects, previous projects that we are debt financing at the moment. First one is Kernahan, so that was for an expansion at our Kernahan pumping station. Again, East Quad, installation of our sewer sanitary system and the pump station at Colonnade, a rehabilitation of our digester, and the water looping down County Road 19 and Van Buren Street, or County Road 44, or 24, sorry. So that's the list of our debt servicing at the moment.
Excellent. Thank you.
Next slide.
Apologize, Deputy Mayor, just not looking the right way. Go ahead.
Sorry, it is a question you've heard twice already. This is to Deputy Director Dancy. I would like to know at a future date what the outstanding debt is for each of those items.
It'll all be provided to you at the same time.
Yeah.
We have
Okay.
the debt repayment schedules available.
Okay.
And we'll forward them to you as soon as can.
Great, thank you.
Carry on.
Next slide, please. So at this point, we do have just showing the capital costs. The next slide will break out the capital costs, but this is just a summary of the costs and the funding sources. This slide may be the more one for council to review. So we have a number of projects for the water and wastewater budget. We have tried to identify what's wastewater, what are water projects. Some big items that we're looking at, we will see phase 1 of the water pollution control plan expansion, and the amount shown here, again, is an estimate of year 1. As we present to council in February regarding an award, we will have a bit more of a breakdown. We're doing a bit more cost analysis now that we have received some tenders. So this is just what our estimations were when we were developing this budget. We do identify both on the water and wastewater side, the County Road 43 expansion pieces, because there are some sanitary portions, as we mentioned, and again, some water main piping. Again, this is spread, this amount is for 2024, but there is a 3-year budget allocation for this project. So what you see is only for 2024, not the entire piece for 43. We do identify, like we mentioned before, some inflow and infiltration improvements, some sanitary main replacements, a number of equipment updates, such as temporary power hookups, replacement of some pump parts, a number of those, some UPS, uninterruptible power supply replacements from the wastewater side. In regards to the water side, we're looking at hot water pressure washer, replacement of our lawnmower. It's past its useful life now, and we're having difficulty with replacement parts. Last year, council approved a compact utility tractor to help with maintenance for the water and wastewater services, and so we have some additional implements we're looking to purchase there. We have analyzers and monitoring systems, so that these are some of our ultrasonics, our radar systems for level sensors at some of our stations. Replacement of the roof at our Kernahan pumping station. It's been found to be leaking. Our leak detection kit that we mentioned before. We are continuing with improvements to our water system by identifying dead ends in our water system and trying to find efficiencies to loop that, which will provide better water quality or reduce stagnation in the system, as well as some hydrant replacements and a service pump replacement. So that's the list of capital projects that we're presenting for this year's budget. I'm happy to answer any questions.
And just to make it abundantly clear, Mr. Finley, as per your funding sources, at this point, reserve/debt financing for a total of 20 million, plus an expected grant that's been confirmed at 10 million, or is being pursued at 10 million?
The grant has not been confirmed. That grant piece should actually be most likely put through separately. That is part of our discussions with potential correctional facility and contributions there.
Right.
It's not necessarily a grant, or it isn't a grant, I should say. There should be some changes to that wording.
Okay. So external sources.
Yes.
The point here is that this is not taxpayer funded. Of course, 2/3 of our municipality is rural, so it is the users of the system, plus DCs and reserves that have been collected over time through the users themselves, correct? That will fund phase one? Have I stated that correctly or no?
The development charges that were collected were from new builds.
Understood.
And
yep.
yes, that'll be funding that project. We will have to do some debt financing
Right.
For that. We may have to, part of the way the financial plan, our rate review looked at it, was we may have to optimize our borrowing. When we're financing, we may have to borrow from some of our reserves, but the future development charges will pay back those reserves. Again, so that we're not financing as much debt. If we have some money to play, knowing that the development charges will pay that back,
Right.
so that it isn't on the existing users, it's on growth, because it is a growth-related project.
Yes.
That was some of the strategizing that was happening when we undertook the rate review.
And you're speaking of the one in 2020?
In 2020, yes.
Yes, that
Yep.
council, I think, had ample opportunity to review at the time.
Correct, it was approved by council,
Yeah,
yes.
exactly.
Yeah.
Okay. So with that in mind, a combination of reserves and debt financing is being contemplated
Correct.
as the majority, right, of what we see here from a funding source perspective.
Correct, and then again, that large amount is purely for the expansion of the water pollution control plan.
Yes,
Yeah.
gotcha, okay. Okay, excellent. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you to Director Finley or possibly someone else, senior management. The development charges are exclusive of properties that paid the frontage charge 30 years ago or so. Is that correct?
I will defer a bit to Director of Planning, Ms. Martin, but I believe it's any new development will pay development charges. Is my
Any new
understanding.
development, including properties that previously had to pay a frontage charge for the existing water pollution control plant?
Correct.
Yes.
The development charges, or the frontage charges of the day, through the Development Charges Act, the value can be deducted from the current owing. There may be a difference. So it's done on a site-by-site consideration, but the majority of the homes that were assessed back in 1990, when the frontage charges for the current plant were assessed, pretty much have been developed. It's the odd lot out, especially since the footprint of the original plant is actually smaller than the footprint that is currently served by the wastewater treatment plant. The wastewater treatment plant, although operating at 65%, is serving more homes than the original design intent.
But you say the properties that paid a frontage charge are mostly developed, but what about infills and that kind of development within that old footprint?
They are assessed on a site-by-site consideration. We do have a chart of all the frontage charges that were charged in 1990.
Thankfully, the records are good, it seems. We appreciate that. Councillor Wilson. Councillor Wilson? Or I'm sorry, is there someone else? Councillor Sullivan? Am I missing a hand? Okay, Councillor Wilson?
Okay, through you, Mayor Peckford, to anyone. This could be a very loaded question. So I'm to understand that we are going to borrow money to finance our sewage treatment plant and their wastewater treatment plant. And that money that we are borrowing will be paid back through all taxpayers' money or through only user fees for wastewater or the water plant? Like residents that are paying?
Mr. Finley, go ahead.
Correct, through you, Madam Mayor. That is correct. The repayments are through the water and wastewater budget. For clarification, it is to be funded through development charges, with the understanding in the rate review looked at, we don't have the total development charges at the moment. It's the chicken before the egg. You need the facility to get the people to come, or the units to come. When the units come, we charge the amount that they needed to come to pay for it.
Okay.
So we may have to borrow some water and wastewater reserves to
Right.
help fund that debt financing until the time that those development charges can repay that reserve.
And those wastewater reserves are from what the town water usage is?
What is collected through the
So-
water billing, yes.
Me as a well and septic user out in the country will not be paying the interest or the loan payment back, right?
Correct.
Thank you.
Not a penny. Not a penny.
Not a penny. Okay.
And I think
For
3 of 5
for the
council...
public, I asked the question, you have the answer.
And 3 of 5 council members are rural residents, right, not benefiting from town water and sewer. So, good question.
Yeah.
All right. Any other comments on this one? I know, Mr. Finley, as you've said, that tender will come back in February, and I'm sure you'll have a more elaborate presentation on the award and its financing, clearly.
That is correct, Madam Mayor.
Okay.
We'll have a fulsome, detailed report
Yes.
once we come back with the results and the recommendations of how we see to move forward.
Beautiful, thank you. Okay. So with that in mind, are we going to Appendix C, or are you done?
Madam Mayor, if I may, that concludes the presentation
Okay.
in regards to the SMT prepared budget. There is background within the binders provided in regards to some summary in operating and capital, as well as capital justifications for council's enjoyment.
Indeed. Well, I will go to Councillor Sullivan, but I will note that I think this is the first budget in several years that's come in on January 10th, so congratulations. Obviously, you rallied the crew and got everyone to this place, even in the absence of a Director of Finance. So thank you. It's extremely helpful. I know we have two sessions, public engagement sessions, one of which is next week in person, the 17th, I think in the afternoon in person. Someone's going to remind us of the time. Chloe, do you have the time? You're going to get it? And then we have a virtual consultation in early February, if I'm not mistaken. 4 to 5:30. Next week is January 17th, 4 to 5:30 in the Municipal Center. Okay. And February 1st is from 4 to 7, virtual. 2 presentations, gotcha. Okay. Sounds good. Thank you very much. Anything else? Councillor Sullivan, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I had a question, but it wasn't related to the water and wastewater, so I delayed it to now. Just an observation that throughout the, most of the departmental operating budgets had a line transfer from reserves. And so my question is, what plan is there to replenish those reserves when there's so much money being taken out of them? Have we looked at how we're going to replenish those reserves?
Ms. Zumwalt, please.
Thank you. We will be looking at a reserve, through you, Your Worship, we will be looking at a reserve strategy and an updating of a reserve strategy, as well as taking a look once we get our 2022 audited statements in regards to those reserves. So it's a question that we may not be able to answer right now, but we will in the near future, because as part of the finance work plan over the next little while will be the reserve policies and updating them.
Thank you very much, and I would also like to echo Mayor Peckford's comments that thank you very much and the whole senior management team, and for the new deputy, Mr. Darcy, thank you for jumping in with both feet at this stage. So kudos to all of senior management for getting all of this done on time.
On time, on budget? Who else? Deputy Mayor? Am I missing hands here?
Yeah, just a final question. I may have missed it because this is the first time we've seen it, but is there, are we going to be provided some information with four-year forecast? Because we do operate on a 4-year financial planning.
Aspirationally, we've been operating with a longer term view, and I think that is captured to some extent in the budget documents, Ms. Dunlop?
Your Worship, it is not. Okay. We have been looking at Questica in regards to, we do input our numbers for forecasting. The budget before you is the 2024 budget. With the time challenges and the employment vacancies that we've had, we do not have that in this document. Okay.
Understood.
At some time, we'll be seeing that later in the year?
We will get back to you on that. Okay.
Sounds good. All right. I understand efforts are underway to hire a Director of Finance, so that'll probably help things along. All right. Councillor Strachan, please.
Thank you, through Madam Mayor, for the CAO, I believe. When we look at what the estimated average property tax increases are per property, we're using an average property value. I'm assuming that's on the current MPAC average assessed values for properties in our municipality. Is that correct?
Through Your Worship, yes. And also it is MPAC has not done their updates. They had planned to do an update, but it is also based on the value of taxation that we require as a municipality to operate. So should those MPAC values change in the future, the value that we still require does not change, so that will change the levies.
Yes, and that was my follow-up question, is that do we have an update with respect to MPAC and when they will be doing their next round of assessments? We do not have that information. Okay.
I don't think the information is out there, so it's not that we don't have the information. MPAC is still in a holding pattern. Chloe can provide some additional information. There is some studying underway about how MPAC in the future would roll out any increase based upon notable, MPAC would roll out its system based upon expected increases in property value. So it's very much a live issue, but I don't believe there's a game plan. Chloe?
In anticipation of this question coming from council with regards to the budget process, Madam CAO has directed the clerk's office to reach out to MPAC, which we have, to bring a delegation forward in the spring to provide council with some additional information on how a potential rollout will happen. I'm sure MPAC does not have a definitive date yet from our last correspondence, but perhaps that delegation will provide some additional context for council as to how it will be when it does roll out.
There's actually, the MPAC's been directed to consider eliminating the 4-year phase-in. So there's a lot at play right now on the part of MPAC in terms of how they might move forward, but there's nothing imminent in terms of a new property valuation. Okay, any other questions? Seeing none, I believe yes, go ahead.
Yeah, just to follow up on the Zampak thing, just so the public knows that if your assessed value goes up, then the levy goes down. We're not going to take that, run to the bank with the increase in taxation revenue.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Right. And I believe, Ms. Dunlop, that's what you were suggesting. There's a certain amount of dollars that the municipality needs to fulfill its core functions, and obviously with increased property values, there would be an adjustment in order to ensure that we don't collect more than we need. Okay. I think we just have a motion before us in terms of receiving the budget presentation this evening and to direct staff to carry out public consultation sessions as a requirement of the budget process. Would anyone like to move and second that, please? Councillor Wilson, Councillor Strachan, thank you. I'll call the question. All in favor? Good. And then, of course, we have our confirmation bylaw. That is that bylaw 0724 to confirm proceedings of council held on Jan 10th be adopted and passed. Mover and seconder. Deputy Mayor, Councillor Sullivan. Excellent. I'll call the question. All in favor? And then adjournment. Motion to adjourn at 9:15. Who wants to get us to adjournment? Councillor Wilson. Deputy Mayor. Okay, good. I'm calling the question. All in favor? Thank you.